Joining us now to talk about all these things, we welcome back Reince Priebus, former Republican National Committee chair, former chief of staff, and Fox News political analyst now, and the great Steve Forbes, Forbes Media chairman and editor-in-chief. Gentlemen, thank you very much. Reince, I'll go to you. I mean, we're going to cover this on the economic side later in the show. But politically, internationally, the fact is Drill Baby Drill changed everything. And we became an oil exporter. And we're whooping them at their own game. And we're not relying on any countries that may, seek to damage us. I mean, I think it's just an act of genius and a crucial part of the successes that Mr. Trump is now having. What you make of it?
Well, I agree with you, Larry, and that was a great opening riff to set the table. I mean, the policies started, as you know, in 1.0 with one executive order after the next, and we started talking about the Keystone Pipeline and making permitting more accessible to companies across the country. One of the other less reported items is the fact that China is one of the biggest recipients of oil in Iran, and now the United States and the things that Donald Trump ordered there, I think, put us at a strategic advantage over China in regard to that oil today. And so from a political matter, you're also correct that when most people look at the economy, they want to look at what is the price of gas and how much are groceries. I mean, to the average American family, that is how they assess a big part of the American economy. And so driving those gas prices back down after this small spike is going to be important to the president, important to the Republicans in the midterm, to winning in November. And, you know, nobody understands that better than Donald Trump. We've seen it in his actions, not just his words. And so for that, I think that we ought to be grateful.
I mean, Steve Forbes, as you well know, OPEC, Saudis, Iran, Russia, other countries held the oil threat over our head for years. We were afraid to take actions because it might bump up the price of oil. I don't know, I think at one point in the 70s, we were only down to 5, 6, or 7 million barrels a day, which was pathetic. We're now approaching 14 million. If it hadn't been for Biden, we'd probably be 15 or 16 million, but we'll probably get there also. And it reduces things like inflation threats, it reduces recession threats, and it gives us enormous power to conduct foreign policy and trade policy. I mean, this was Trump. People made fun of him when he talked about drill, baby, drill. It has just been huge. I mean, that's why I say, literally, it was pure genius.
Well, it's also, he took advantage of the pure genius of the American open free market economy.
Yes, yes.
And for years and years and years, experts said you couldn't do shale, just absolutely uneconomic. But you had a handful of people who were determined to do it, and guess what? They made the impossible possible. And we've been living off of that ever since. And that's the great Trump card we have, you might say. Also, unlike almost any other country, we allow in this country individuals to own minerals underground. So in other countries, governments dominate it, so you don't have the kind of wildcatting and the kind of entrepreneurship we get here on energy. So we're playing our cards. And when we look at China, we have to keep that in mind. Even though they have a great big government and all that sort of thing, they're building up the Navy and all that sort of thing, but keep in mind, America's strength is the fact that we are not centralized. We don't do things from the top. Our government realized, at least this one, you can't predict the future, so let's see what the free economy does. Now we're reaping the rewards for it. And what I can't get over is the Democrats are always wrong about foreign policy, and we see it here today. Why do they think the American people, even though they're skeptical because of what happened in the last 20 years, why they think that's going to be a winning issue when we see what is already unfolding? And yes, the president said he doesn't rule out troops on the ground. I think that's more for consumption in Iran.
Yes.
Don't get any ideas that we're going away.
By the way, on the other point, Harris-Harvard poll that just came out, it's a very good poll. They are showing tremendous American support for what the president did in Venezuela. It took a while to permeate, I think, but now the numbers came out. I don't have them in front of me. We're going to take them up later. But I think just about 60% favor what we did in Venezuela. My guess is, okay, that after a period of time, the same will be true in Iran. But your other point, actually, I'll go to Reince. You know, Reince, Steve Forbes makes this great case. Steve Forbes, the preeminent supply-side entrepreneurial guy. He's been there for 4 decades. He could have been president not so long ago, and he ran a campaign that we all pitched in on. But look, this issue of entrepreneurship the frackers, okay, the Harold Hams of the world. Is that fair, Harold?
Yes.
The wonderful man. The frackers, the horizontal drillers, you know, they broke through the shale, and that's what allowed so much of this. And Trump just said, go ahead. I'm going to give you some tax incentives, and you take a swing at the ball and put out as much as you possibly can. So we've gone from 9 million to almost 14 million. If it hadn't been for Joe Biden's insanity, we'd probably be at 16 million, but we'll get there. And look at the impact on the world. Trump is changing the entire balance of world trade right now, the entire balance of world foreign policy. One of the reasons, Reince, is our drill, baby, drill energy policy. And I want to be fair. I should add clean coal, and I should also add the nuclear modules that are being developed. That's part of it, too, right? Natural gas, clean burning fuel. I mean, this is the heart, in some sense, of Trump's policies.
100%, but it's just what Steve said, and I agree with you. Steve Forbes, American hero, big fan. Yeah. Well, you know, I was thinking when you all were talking about how Trump does these things. You know, one of the things that Larry, you and I got to see up close is that one of his great qualities, it's a quality that drives some people crazy, is that he listens to everybody, number one. And number two, he's very accessible. So what does that mean? What it means is that when he wants to unleash energy across the country and say, I want to drill, I want to be the world's exporter of oil, and he says, let's do it. You know what happens after about a month? Somebody he's talking to that can't get a permit at Interior or at Energy or at EPA, they talk to the president because he talks to everybody. And he said, you know what, this is great, Mr. President, but I can't get a permit. I can't do this. I can't do that. And then what does the president do, Larry? He's on the phone with the Secretary of Interior, Energy, EPA. What's going on? I heard this isn't getting done. And things get done.
No.
To Steve's point about the Democrats.
No, listen. He would call Kudlow at the National Economic Council and say, you know, damn it, get that permit through. Jam it through. That's what he would do. We had the
I heard, Larry, I heard nothing's happening with this. Why is this thing stuck,
Yes.
Larry?
Yes, exactly.
But, you know, to Steve's other point, I think is important. You know, the doomcasters on the other side, these Democrats, they're instant pessimists. They are professional doubters. They are the warm beer at every party. You know, we kill Khomeini, all of the leadership, knock out the Air Force, knock out the Navy, and they're sitting running around. We're not talking about the War Powers Act. This is illegal. He shouldn't do this. I mean, for 1 second, if they would just be half reasonable and normal and say, I'm grateful that Khomeini is dead. He was a threat and a terrorist. But I want to wait and see how this thing goes. That would be a reasonable Democrat response. But they can't do it. And the American people can see through it. And so I think they do themselves a big disservice.
Oh, yes, they look like fools. Nonsense. Steve Forbes, to close this out, you know, on this point, Reince's point, which is really important. First of all, the Democrats are accusing him of undermining the so-called War Powers Resolution, which most presidents have, by the way, ignored. But the fact is, he is in compliance. Point number one. He's done exactly. He's notified them. He briefed them. He's got 60 days to do what he needs to do as commander-in-chief, and then another 30 days to disengage if necessary. So he's right there. The other point, though, Democrats keep saying Trump is giving us a forever war in Iran. I would say, I think you would say, wait a second, Iran has been giving us a 47-year war, and Trump is ending it. I mean, now, if the American public can't understand that, I feel sorry for our system, but I think people do understand that. Trump is ending the war.
Yes, and people are finally, this president's taking seriously what Iran has been saying for 47 years.
Right.
They're out to get us. They're out to get Israel. They're out to get us. And by the way, I learned so much from you back in the early 1980s in economics when you were at OMB, being that supply-side spear carrier inside the Reagan administration. But the fact of the matter is, you know, I think maybe the Democrats never learned to tell time. Maybe this is a blot on our education system. 5 days in Iran is a forever war.
Yeah, right. That's it, right. Exactly. 5 days.
10 years, 20 years in Afghanistan is not for. Hello.
Right. That's exactly right. It's
So
exactly.
maybe we should send them a Trump watch. Here's how to tell time.
All right, a Trump watch. I actually have a Trump watch. I don't know. I finally got to say that. Steve Forbes, the best, the best. Thank you, my friend.
Thank
we
you.
appreciate it. Reince Priebus, as always, your wisdom is terrific. Thank you for coming back on. We appreciate it very much, Reince.